I, for ages, was sort of slightly musically schizophrenic. My father was very, very eclectic. I'd be summoned from my bedroom to come downstairs and listen to the radio or whatever he was playing, and sometimes it would be because he's listening to Bartók's Miraculous Mandarin. He had the score open and I had to study with him how amazing the orchestration was. But equally likely, I'd be summoned into his music room because he was checking out the fretless bass playing on Paul Simon's You Can Call Me Out. It's got some reverse bass thing at the end. And he said, "You got to check this out. It's unbelievable." I was just as exposed to Benjamin Britten as I was pop music, and he didn't really distinguish. You know, he wasn't snobby about music at all, which was great. I first fell in love with KEFs because all those times I was summoned to Dad's music room, he had a pair of 1972 KEFs. So Dad's room was associated with like, oh, look at these, they're like this big, and with the beautiful walnut, all the rest of it. You know, there was no messing around with his speakers. So it was like, oh yes, one day I'll get some of those, because he was so often busy in the music room that I'd kind of try and sing. No, don't play it. I'm going in. I'm writing. It's like, oh, so close. Nearly got to listen to the big speakers, but you know, maybe like when he's having lunch, I'll sneak in there. The musical education I had from 8 to 18 could not have been more strict or more academic. I mean, I went to a cathedral choir school. We were singing Palestrina and Tallis and like 16th century church music and all the rest of it. And then I went to Oxford and all these posh schools and everything. Everything's incredibly classical. And then I sort of overreacted the other way, got kicked out of school, made drum and bass records and tried to, so I was too cool for school, didn't want anyone to know I could play, you know, Brahms Rhapsodies on the piano and whatnot. And then I was in the record industry for a bit, but I knew, and my father just sort of patiently, where he said, you know, there'll come a time when you'll get bored with drum and bass. I promised, oh, piss off then, you know, what do you know? It's true, I didn't want to stay up till 6 in the morning, go into endless raves until the end of my life kind of thing. So I couldn't figure it out. I'd get frustrated in the record industry because it's always 3.5 minutes and the chords are never as interesting as Debussy. I was sort of a bit lost. And then when I started doing film music, I was like, oh, here we go. This is when you can just do all of the above. It was the first time I didn't feel kind of musically confused. There are certain things an orchestra can do that can't be done on synths and plugins, and vice versa. I think one of the great lessons I've learned from my dad is like, don't worry about any of that, don't judge any of it, just think of it as a giant toolbox with all sorts of different things in. It's certainly true that people who are overly classical are sometimes unaware of the level of sophistication in electronic music and can sometimes have a slightly patronizing attitude towards it because it's often not as harmonically and melodically developed. Conversely, people who are really heavily plugged into electronic music can be unnecessarily dismissive of orchestra. I mean, that's a bit of a cliche, but I'm just saying it does tend to sort of slide into one or other camp and people feel sort of comfortable in. The point I love about film music is all these ideas or talents that you may or may not have are in service of telling a story. Because we have such command of texture and color and using plugins and synths and everything, very often, in order to produce tension or something, you can do it sonically with something that's a bit damaged. Supposing there was a character in a movie and the feeling is, oh, you know, we're not too happy about the edit because we feel like it's given away too early that this character's evil. And then meanwhile, you've written a score where in the very first scenes you see him, you get all these perverse harmonies. You say, wait, it's even worse. What's happened? Say, well, it's because of the music. Now what you could do, if that was the note, say, well, here's what, don't worry, I can take care of. What we'll do is the first 6 cues where you see him will actually have slightly warm, sympathetic music. And without anyone realizing, people are going to feel comfortable with this character and they'll be sent the wrong way and think, no, he's fine. And then only later we'll start changing the harmony, and then people are going to be like, ooh, I don't feel so, I'm a little worried about this guy. I mean, I did a little bit of that on Captain America 2. Because when you watch a movie, what people tend to think is they believe that everything that they understand about the story is semantic and literal and visual. So it's like, I see what's happening and I'm listening to what people are saying, therefore I understand the movie. What they don't understand is at the same time, manipulatively, this other narrative is being broadcast that's abstract, but in a way that's even more powerful. When you're engrossed in the movie, you don't separate out, oh yeah, I'm watching this scene, nothing's happening, it's just the music is making me feel that. It's just one experience. And the real secret to film music is step outside of yourself for a second, don't be selfish, look at the movie, what is the movie doing, what are the characters doing, what's the important part of the narrative, how can you best use all of the skills you've got to enhance something that already exists that's more important than you are. That's not to say you won't incorporate all sorts of contemporary things, but for a reason and for a helpful reason. So in Money Monster, for example, there's all sorts of contemporary textures, but for a reason. It's a story all about this crazy glitch in a very complicated financial transaction system. So it's appropriate to have glitchy, weird sounds, and that's helping the story. If I were to sort of go, now in the middle of Captain America Civil War, I feel like just when the superheroes really clash, I'm going to bust out all my crazy production movies. Like, why would you do that? That's not helping us. That's a moment that's a sort of grand, almost Clash of the Titans type moment that needs a giant theme and a sense of timeless grandeur. People who are tempted to think that superhero movies are pretty superficial, people run around with some kind of crazy power and there's probably a big villain at the end who gets beaten up and then you can all go home and validate your parking. But if you scrape under the bonnet of this Civil War film that I just did with Captain America Civil War, there's an awful lot going on. You sort of need to understand in order for, I'll give you a good example, it might be tempting to think, oh look, I've got all these superheroes, so what the score will be is every time this character comes, there'll be that theme for that character, and this theme for that character, and that thing, and then we'll be good, right? Whilst it obviously is true that Captain America has a theme, that Spider-Man has a theme, all the rest of it, it turns out that in order to really make the movie work, two of the most important themes in that film were the Civil War theme and the thriller theme. And the Civil War theme is an overall narrative theme that all the characters get bound up in. Because the story isn't about 15 separate stories of 15 separate superheroes. What the story really is an ideological conflict that splits these superheroes into two teams that, I mean, without sounding too pretentious, is actually quite an important argument, one that we don't have to face with superheroes. It's kind of a metaphor. But if you have entities that are really powerful, that are not politically answerable, you know, there's no general election for Iron Man, you can't vote these people out. Who's answerable and to whom, and you know, how's that going to work? So now we figured out what the underlying stuff is in this movie, you're more likely to write more interesting music because you're not just staring at the surface of the screen going, oh, they're fighting, let's do fighting music. Oh, this looks quite tense, let's just do some tension music. It's like, well, hang on, that's a very superficial approach. What about understanding the underlying themes and then trying to write music which supports that, and you'll get a deeper experience. The experience of doing Birth of a Nation with Nate just didn't even feel like work at all. It's already a privilege to work on a story that is actually enormously important and has social relevance now. But when he approached me, it was very much like, oh, you're probably not going to work on this because like I got nothing. I can't pay you, I can't, no. I said, don't worry about that. I'm really glad you asked me, and the answer is yes. And then there were all these crazy obstacles where I just had to keep taking a leap of faith. So he had no money. I didn't care about getting paid, but you need money to pay an orchestra. You need a lot of money. So maybe let's do that. Maybe we do piano, solo, cello. He said, no. You just do whatever it is that you think the movie's asking for. So I started writing the score with choir, with solo singer, with orchestra, with solo cello, with children's choir, and he just kept nailing it. Anything that he got involved in, he just had the personality and the power of the message of the film just meant that people wanted to get involved and somehow make it work. And it was just like watching obstacles just get blasted out the way. The idea of any artistic limitation just completely disappeared, and we did the score that we wanted to do. Ironically, I would say more than 85% of people watching a movie are not even consciously aware of music even existing. You want someone to enjoy a movie. Not everyone's got the time or indeed the budget or the money to have some giant screen with amazing speakers and all the rest of it. And to go, oh, well, you know, this shouldn't be happening unless it's with the perfect sound system. A, it would be hypocritical because I've watched a number of films, not in ideal sonic circumstances. And B, it's the same thing of getting in the way again. It's like, oh, well, I did the music, so isn't it all about the music? And you should be listening to this on a, what? They just want to enjoy the experience of watching a film, and if they're lucky enough to have the money to have a system that sounds amazing, great. For a lot of people, it'll be an iPhone. But I mean, I'd rather they get some enjoyment from watching the film at all than not. The real truth is, not many people go to the cinema and have a discrete musical experience. And if as a composer, you're going to get all offended about that, you're in the wrong game, because the whole point is, people are going to see a story, and the story is enhanced by things. It's enhanced by special effects, and it's enhanced by music and all sorts of production. The majority of people have come to have a story experience in which, without them realizing, music has been used. But the overall experience is this one thing that we call a movie.